Nobody pays attention to old men in hospital waiting rooms, especially ones who look like they haven't had a proper meal in weeks. When the security guard decided to escort him out with unnecessary force, sending the frail 81-year-old crashing to the linoleum, it seemed like just another sad story of society failing its forgotten, until his shirt ripped and revealed the DEVGRU tattoo that made the witnessing nurse's blood run cold, because she knew that symbol meant they had just destroyed someone who could destroy them all. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's General Hospital hummed with tired persistence. In the main waiting area, rows of plastic chairs hosted the usual collection of human misery. Worried families, crying children, and forgotten souls who treated emergency rooms like warming centers. In the corner sat Commander Samuel "Ghost" Morrison, though nobody knew that name anymore. At 81, he looked like every stereotype of a forgotten veteran rolled into one heartbreaking package. Gray hair hung in unwashed strands, clothes bore permanent wrinkles, and hollow cheeks spoke of too many skipped meals. What the hospital staff didn't know was that Sam Morrison had once been the most feared man in the most feared unit in the world, DEVGRU SEAL Team 6, the same unit that eliminated Osama bin Laden. But that was 40 years ago, in a world that had forgotten him as thoroughly as he had tried to forget it. Sam clutched a crumpled appointment slip for Dr. Martinez, oncology. The appointment was for 9 a.m. It was now 3:15 p.m., and his number still hadn't been called. He wasn't complaining. Sam Morrison had learned patience in places where impatience got you killed. But the hospital staff didn't see patience. They saw a problem. "Sir," came a voice that cut through Sam's quiet contemplation. A security guard approached, young, maybe mid-20s, with inflated authority. "You've been here since this morning. Do you actually have an appointment, or are you just using this place to get out of the cold?" The question hit like a physical blow. He did look like someone seeking shelter. Army surplus jacket from the 1980s, boots patched with duct tape, smell probably offensive to people accustomed to antiseptic corridors. "I have an appointment," Sam said quietly, holding up the paper. "Dr. Martinez, oncology." The guard barely glanced at it. "Whatever appointment you think you have, you're going to have to take it somewhere else. You're making other patients uncomfortable." Sam began gathering his belongings: plastic bag of medical records, cold thermos, worn paperback book. Standing up proved difficult. The cancer in his lungs had been sapping his strength for months. The security guard, interpreting this as defiance, decided to help. "Come on, old man. Time to go." His hands grabbed Sam's shoulders with unnecessary force. Sam, weakened by illness and caught off balance, couldn't resist. His feet tangled, balance failed, and he crashed to the linoleum with a sound that made everyone turn and stare. The impact drove breath from his lungs. His bag scattered contents across the floor, medical records mixing with loose pills and cold coffee. But as Sam struggled to rise, his worn jacket caught on a chair leg and tore along a seam hanging on by threads. The fabric split wide, exposing his chest to fluorescent lights and staring eyes. And there, etched into weathered skin over his heart, was a tattoo that made the world suddenly very quiet. The DEVGRU trident. Not the standard SEAL emblem civilians might recognize, but the specific, classified marking of Naval Special Warfare Development Group. The unit so secret, most military personnel weren't supposed to know it existed. But someone in that waiting room did know. Sarah Chen had been a Navy corpsman for 8 years before becoming a civilian nurse. She'd served with Marines in Iraq and Afghanistan, treated wounded SEALs in field hospitals. She recognized the subtle differences in military tattoos that separated regular service from something far more serious. The DEVGRU trident wasn't something you got at a tattoo parlor. It was earned in blood, in classified operations, in places that didn't appear on maps. Sarah dropped her clipboard. The sound was like a gunshot in the sudden silence. "Jesus Christ," she whispered. Then louder, "Get away from him, right now." The security guard looked confused. "What? I'm just trying to—" "I said get away from him." Sarah's voice carried authority from real emergencies. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" She knelt beside Sam, hands gentle as she helped him sit up. Up close, she could see other details, small scars from handling explosives, eyes that automatically scanned for exits, bearing that spoke of decades of discipline. "Sir, are you hurt?" Sam looked at her with eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by kindness. "I'm all right, just need to get up." "Take your time." Sarah's voice was professional but warm. The security guard was getting impatient. "I don't know what the big deal is about some old military tattoo." "That's not just some old military tattoo," Sarah interrupted. "That's DEVGRU, SEAL Team 6. The unit that killed bin Laden, the most classified, most lethal operators in the American military." The effect was immediate. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. The entire waiting room focused on the old man who had been treated like refuse. Sam pulled his torn jacket together, trying to cover the tattoo that had been his secret for decades. That was a long time ago. But Sarah wasn't letting him disappear. "How long ago doesn't matter. What matters is what you did, what you sacrificed." Dr. Martinez, the oncologist Sam had been waiting to see, pushed through the crowd. "What's happening here?" He stopped when he saw Sam on the floor. "Mr. Morrison, are you all right?" Sarah looked surprised. "You know him?" "Of course I know him. He's my 3 o'clock appointment. Has been for months." Dr. Martinez knelt beside Sam, professional and concerned. "Did you fall?" "He didn't fall," Sarah said. "He was pushed by security while waiting for his appointment." Dr. Martinez's face darkened. "You pushed one of my patients?" "I thought he was homeless," the guard said weakly. "He looked like someone fighting cancer for 6 months. Someone too proud to ask for help." The doctor helped Sam to a chair. "Mr. Morrison has never missed an appointment, never complained, never caused trouble." By now, hospital administrators were appearing. Ms. Henderson, in a business suit, approached with damage control instincts. "What's the problem here?" Dr. Martinez stood to face her. "Your security staff assaulted one of my patients, a decorated veteran of classified military operations." Sarah spoke up. "This man wears the DEVGRU tattoo, SEAL Team 6. He's not just a veteran, he's one of America's most elite warriors." The administrator's face went through confusion, disbelief, and dawning understanding of what had occurred. "Oh my God," she whispered. Sam, sitting quietly while others discussed his life, finally spoke. "Could I just see the doctor now? I've been waiting a while." His simple request cut through all drama. Here was a man facing cancer, assaulted while seeking care, and all he wanted was his appointment. Dr. Martinez took charge. "Of course, right now." He turned to Ms. Henderson. "I want that security guard suspended, and a formal apology prepared." As they headed to examination rooms, Sarah walked alongside. "Mr. Morrison, there are people who understand what you've given, people who won't forget." Sam looked at her with grateful eyes. "Thank you." The security guard was terminated within an hour, but consequences went beyond one job loss. The story reached local news. Hospital security assaults decorated Navy SEAL veteran. Within days, Sam found himself at the center of a story he never wanted. But perhaps the most meaningful response came from an unexpected source. A week later, 3 men in civilian clothes knocked on Sam's apartment door. "Commander Morrison, I'm Captain Rodriguez. We're currently active with the unit." Sam stared, understanding dawning. "How did—" "Word gets around when one of ours ends up in the news. Mind if we come in?" The SEALs looked around Sam's sparse apartment without judgment, only concern. "We wanted to check on you," Rodriguez said. "We did some checking. You're fighting cancer, living on barely enough, handling this alone." "Things change when you get old," Sam said. "People forget." "We don't forget," one SEAL said firmly. "You trained half the men who trained us. Your 80s and 90s operations set standards we still follow." Rodriguez handed Sam an envelope. "We've set up a fund. Contributions from team members, SEAL Foundation, civilians who heard your story. This covers medical expenses and more. It's not charity, it's family taking care of family." Sam's hands trembled as he looked at the envelope. "I don't know what to say. You earned this 40 years ago. We're just late delivering it." Over following weeks, Sam found himself reconnected to a community he thought he'd lost. Retired SEALs shared their civilian struggles. Active personnel paid respects. The hospital invited him to speak at a veterans ceremony. Sarah Chen became a regular visitor, bringing staff to meet him. "You've changed this place. Ever since your story got out, staff looks at veteran patients differently. We ask more questions, make fewer assumptions." Maybe something good came out of it then, Sam reflected. More than you know. There's a training program now for all staff about veteran issues. Understanding that the homeless-looking guy might be a Medal of Honor recipient. 3 months later, Sam stood before hospital staff and veterans wearing his first new suit in decades. "I didn't want to be here today," he began. "For 30 years, I've been content to be invisible. That's what we were trained for, to operate in shadows without recognition." He paused, looking at attentive faces. "But what happened here taught me something important. Invisibility is a luxury I can no longer afford. Not when other veterans are struggling in silence, other heroes being overlooked because they don't fit our expectations." His voice grew stronger. "The young security guard who pushed me, I don't hold grudges. He saw what most people see, an old, poor man who didn't belong. He made assumptions based on appearance." Sam looked directly at hospital staff. "Every person walking through these doors has a story. The homeless veteran might be a Purple Heart recipient. The confused elderly woman might be dealing with combat trauma. You have power to see past appearances, ask questions, to treat every patient with dignity they deserve." The applause was heartfelt, but individual conversations afterward mattered more. Staff promising to do better. Veterans thanking him for giving them voice. A year after the incident, Sam received a call from Captain Rodriguez. "Sir, we're having a reunion ceremony. We'd like you as guest of honor." The ceremony was held at Naval Special Warfare Base in Virginia Beach. As Sam walked through spaces holding so many memories, he was struck by changes and continuities. When introduced to speak, the entire assembly stood. These men rarely showed emotion, trained to compartmentalize feelings, but their respect was evident. "Gentlemen, when I retired 25 years ago, I thought my service was over," Sam began. "I thought I would fade into background and be forgotten." His voice carried clearly. "But I learned something important. Our service doesn't end with the uniform. Our brotherhood doesn't end with civilian life. Our responsibility to each other doesn't end with retirement." He looked at faces connected by shared sacrifice. Every man here has given something significant. Some years of life, some pieces of bodies, some parts of souls. When active duty ends, we continue giving as fathers, mentors, examples of service. The room remained silent. But sometimes we need help. Sometimes battles at home are harder than overseas. Sometimes we need brothers to remind us we're not forgotten, that we still matter. Sam's voice became personal. 6 months ago, I was beaten in a waiting room, treated like garbage because I didn't look important. But that led to something better. It reminded me I'm part of something larger, that my story connects to yours, that none of us faces battles alone. He challenged them. Look out for each other. Check on guys who seem fine. They might not be. Reach out to ones who've disappeared into civilian life. Remember that war doesn't end because deployment is over. After the ceremony, Sam was surrounded by SEALs sharing stories, making connections. But the most meaningful conversation was with a young petty officer from the Bin Laden team. "Sir, before every high-risk operation, we study after-action reports from operations like yours. Your work set templates we still follow. You may have thought you were forgotten, but your legacy lives on in every mission we complete successfully." Sam felt something in his chest, having nothing to do with cancer and everything to do with recognition that his life had mattered. As evening ended, Rodriguez pulled him aside. "You've got a standing invitation anytime. This community is your family. Always has been. And one more thing. We've established the Morrison Fund in your honor. It helps DEVGRU veterans struggling with civilian transition, who might fall through cracks like you did. That's not necessary, Sam protested. Yes, it is. Your story taught us we can't assume our brothers are fine just because they're not asking for help. This fund ensures we reach out proactively. 6 months later, Samuel Morrison passed peacefully, surrounded by community that had embraced his final years. His funeral drew over 300 people, SEALs, hospital staff, veterans, civilians touched by his story. The ceremony was at Arlington National Cemetery, with full military honors. As the flag-draped coffin was lowered, Sarah Chen thought about the strange journey bringing them together. What started as cruelty in a hospital waiting room became a story of redemption, recognition, and renewed purpose. Sam's final years had been filled with more meaning than preceding decades of isolation. The young security guard, now working full-time helping homeless veterans, placed a wreath reading, "Thank you for teaching me to see past appearances. Your lesson changed my life." Captain Rodriguez spoke for DEVGRU. Sam Morrison served his country in shadows for 30 years. His operations were classified, achievements secret, sacrifices unknown. But in final years, he served differently, teaching us every veteran has value, that service doesn't end with retirement, and that brotherhood forged in war must extend into peace. Sam Morrison's legacy lived on in improved veteran care protocols, the Morrison Fund helping struggling SEALs, and countless lives touched by his story. Perhaps most importantly, his story reminded us that heroism comes in many forms, that the most important battles are fought in silence, and that sometimes people who look like they need our help most are actually the ones with the most to teach us about strength, dignity, and grace. The DEVGRU tattoo that shocked a hospital waiting room became a symbol not just of elite service, but of hidden stories surrounding us daily. Stories of sacrifice and service, struggle and survival, ordinary-looking people who have done extraordinary things. Sam Morrison had spent most of his life invisible by choice. In his final act of service, he chose to be seen not for his benefit, but to ensure other invisible heroes would be recognized, valued, and cared for, as they deserve. But the story doesn't end there. 3 years after Sam's passing, Sarah Chen found herself standing in the same hospital waiting room where it all began. She was no longer just a nurse. She'd been promoted to Director of Veteran Affairs for the entire hospital system, a position created in response to Sam Morrison's story. The waiting room looked different now. Gone were the sterile, unwelcoming chairs. In their place were comfortable seating areas with military history books, veteran resource pamphlets, and a small memorial wall featuring photos of patients who had served. At the center was a photograph of Sam Morrison in his dress blues from 1985, with a simple plaque, "Commander Samuel Morrison, USN, Writ, DEVGRU. Every person has a story worth hearing." But what struck Sarah most was the atmosphere. Where once there had been impatience and judgment, now there was understanding. She watched as a young orderly approached an elderly homeless veteran with respect and kindness, asking about his service rather than assuming he didn't belong. The Morrison Protocol had become standard throughout the hospital system, a series of questions and procedures designed to identify and properly care for veterans who might otherwise be overlooked. It had been adopted by hospitals in 12 states and was being considered for national implementation. Dr. Martinez, now in his 70s but still practicing, approached Sarah as she stood reflecting. "Thinking about the old days," he asked. "Thinking about how much has changed," she replied. "Sam would be amazed to see this." "I think he knew," Dr. Martinez said. "That last conversation I had with him right before he passed, he told me that sometimes the most important battles are the ones that change how people see each other." He said his real mission wasn't the classified operations nobody could talk about. It was helping people understand that heroism doesn't always look heroic. Sarah nodded, remembering her own last conversation with Sam. He'd been weak from the cancer treatments, but his eyes had been clear and focused. "Promise me something," he'd said, gripping her hand with surprising strength. "Promise me that when people hear my story, They won't just think about me. Promise me they'll think about the veteran sitting next to them on the bus, the old man feeding pigeons in the park, the woman struggling to fill out paperwork at the VA. Promise me they'll ask questions instead of making assumptions. She had promised, and she'd kept that promise every day since. The Morrison Fund had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What started as a collection among DEVGRU members had become a nationwide foundation supporting veterans in transition. They'd helped over 3,000 veterans find housing, medical care, and employment. But more importantly, they'd helped change the conversation about how society treats its heroes. Tyler, the former security guard who had pushed Sam that day, had become one of the Foundation's most effective advocates. His transformation from someone who saw veterans as problems to someone who dedicated his life to solving veteran homelessness had become a powerful example of redemption and growth. I destroyed a man's dignity because I was too lazy to see past his appearance. Tyler would tell audiences at veteran advocacy events. Sam Morrison taught me that the person you overlook might be the person who saved your freedom. That lesson changed everything about how I see the world. The ripple effects continued to spread in ways no one could have predicted. A documentary about Sam's story had been viewed over 10 million times. Congressional hearings had been held about veteran health care access. Medical schools now included veteran cultural competency training in their curricula. But perhaps the most meaningful change was in the countless individual moments of recognition and respect that happened every day, moments that might never have occurred without Sam Morrison's story serving as a reminder of what was possible when people looked beyond surface appearances. Captain Rodriguez, now Admiral Rodriguez and commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare Command, made an annual pilgrimage to Sam's grave at Arlington. He would stand quietly for a few minutes, then update Sam on how the community was doing. The Morrison Fund helped 12 more guys this month, he would say to the headstone. And we've got a new training program for transitioning operators, making sure nobody falls through the cracks like you did. You'd be proud of how the teams are taking care of each other now. The security industry had also changed. The incident involving Sam Morrison had become a case study in training programs nationwide, teaching security personnel to distinguish between actual threats and people who simply didn't fit conventional expectations of respectability. Sarah often wondered what Sam would think about all the attention his story had generated. He'd been such a private man, content to remain invisible, but she suspected he'd be pleased that his moment of vulnerability had become a source of strength for others. As she prepared to leave the hospital that evening, Sarah noticed a familiar sight, an elderly veteran, clearly down on his luck, sitting in the waiting area. But instead of being ignored or asked to leave, he was surrounded by staff members asking about his service, his needs, his story. The veteran, a Vietnam War Marine, was being treated with the dignity that Sam Morrison had been denied on that day 3 years ago. His torn jacket was being replaced with a clean hospital gown. His injuries were being carefully examined, and his military records were being located to ensure he received all the benefits he'd earned. Commander Morrison, Sarah whispered as she watched the scene unfold. Mission accomplished. Outside, the sun was setting behind the hospital complex, painting the sky in shades of gold and red that reminded Sarah of the colors in the American flag. Somewhere in the city, other veterans were receiving care and respect they might not have gotten before Sam Morrison's story changed how people saw them. The ghost of DEVGRU had accomplished his final mission, not with weapons or stealth, but with the simple power of human dignity recognized and restored. And in a world that too often forgot its heroes, that might have been the most important victory of all. Sometimes the most important missions happen at home, in waiting rooms and ceremonies and quiet moments of human recognition. Sometimes the greatest victory is being remembered not as a number but as a human being whose life mattered, whose service had value, and whose story deserved to be told. But sometimes, just sometimes, the greatest victory is knowing that your story helped change the world for everyone who came after you. And in the quiet corridors of St. Mary's General Hospital, that victory lived on every single day.